met. And there's lots of groups around Connecticut fighting the various battles, but there's nobody's working together. So that's why we formed our group.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, for 30 years I listened to Rush Limbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
I was a ditto head. I was a member of the EIB, Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. I was a salesman, so I got to listen to the radio in between sales calls and when I was working inside on quotes. And I knew all about DEI and CRT before anybody had heard of this stuff, all right? So when I retired at the end of 2018, I started writing letters to papers, and that was my introduction into this. But I was walking my dog one day. It was September 27, 2020, and I'm in a neighborhood with not much through traffic. And there were kids, little kids, in the middle of the street making chalk drawings. So when we got close, I saw what they were writing. Black Lives Matter, hands up, don't shoot, equal pay. It was unbelievable to me. So when I went home, I did something I never did before. I called the first selectman in our town. And I said, I want to volunteer to look at the textbooks we're using in the schools. I figured that these kids were getting it from school. So he said, you don't want to talk to me, you want to talk to the superintendent of schools. And I ended up having an email conversation. His name was Paul Freeman. He's still the superintendent of schools.
He's terrible.
He's terrible, absolutely right.
He's probably the worst one in the state.
Exactly right. So I asked him, I said, Paul, I want to know if we're teaching critical race theory in Guilford schools, if we're teaching the 1619 theory. I want to know if we're using Black Lives Matter textbooks in school. So he sends me back an email, and he says, although we don't directly reference CRT and the 1619 theory in our curriculum, he says, I consider them both valuable approaches to teaching American history. He said, as far as textbooks go, he said, I bought White Fragility and a book called Waking Up White by a woman named Debbie Irving, and I bought 10 copies each, and they shared them with the school leadership team in Guilford. 10 of them read one of the books, and 10 of them read the other, and then they switched. He said, I also bought 300 copies of Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist and gave it to every single teacher in the school district. I was shocked. I was shocked. He also did a joint event with Madison in a place called the New School with a woman named Margaret Hagerman. And she wrote a book called White Kids. So I was involved at that point. He had a, you're not going to believe this, there's an outfit called, there's a website in Guilford called slaveryinguilford.org. Slaveryinguilford.org. It was started by this guy who started a program called the Witness Stones, all right? And his goal was to put a brick in front of every house and business in Guilford where slaves once lived. And they have this series called Witness to History, Slavery in Guilford. And on April 21st, 2021, Superintendent Paul Freeman gave a talk, all right? It was a Zoom lecture put on by the Guilford Library